Good afternoon to everybody. You know, this is what we call a time whereby people go to sleep after having a nice meal. Then usually our biorhythm is down and we tend to be relaxed. Well, anyway, I have had 47 years of experience in this business of security. I used to be a foot soldier, not in the military. I was in the government for 10 years. I worked as an overseas Filipino worker, working for a private military company operating in Nigeria and Southwest Africa. After I came back, I founded my consulting firm. And one of my first clients was the Republic of Nauru. Then after that, I have had success in, people trusting me. And in the past 15 years, having been being the advisor of major transnational companies wanting to operate in the Philippines, I have a job to see to it that they invest in the country. Or they say that our country is quite problematic, and I'll show you why they have this perception that we are problematic. My presentation right now is doing business in remote and risky locations, and of course during interesting times. Right now times are very interesting. We have a popular president described as a person left of center, a social democrat, and is going to institute change in our society. Now, my presentation will first deal with a assessment of how we are perceived. Well, perception is basically 90% reality. And the second part, the last part, will actually be a general discussion on how we could be able to do business and protect our company. This is the Philippines. In the world, there are basically three security levels. We call it low, medium, high. When you say low, you have the likes of Singapore, Tokyo. When you have medium, of course, you will have the likes of Manila. And of course, when you talk of level 3 is low, level 2 is medium, and level 1 is high risk. As you will see from this map, this is actually a map from the Australian Embassy, and not different from the one being issued by the US and other Western governments. As you see, the Philippines is basically has a number of threat levels. The entire Philippines is basically medium, with the exception of Mindanao, which is rated as high risk. And as you would see, Mindanao has two colors, orange and red. The red part is supposedly don't go there. The yellow part, you may go there at your own risk. Of course, the red part is where we have the secessionist problem. The orange part, eastern side, is where you have the communist problem. So that being so, that's how we are perceived. And going back to the second slide, Southeast Asia. As you would see, Southeast Asia, our southern part, especially southern part of the Philippines, you see those pink areas? These are piracy risk areas. And we are quite notorious for that because last April up to early part of this month, we have had 4 piracy incidents. 4 vessels were hijacked and taken to Holo by the Abu Sayyaf. As you know, we have problems with China, and that is also in the map. As you would see, we have boundary disputes. On the West Philippine Sea. The maritime boundary disputes or maritime disputes we have with China is a powder keg. This very moment, elements of the Seventh Fleet, normally based in Southeast Asia, and major elements of the Third Fleet based in San Diego are in Philippine waters. Just to show a point or make a point that we are here in the Philippines. Of course, our other neighbor, the big one, claims by historical right the South China Sea belongs to them. Now, by the first week of July, we expect some resolution by the arbitral tribunal, and that's why there's a lot of heating up going on right now. How are we being rated as far as security risk is concerned? This is what we call a spider diagram, whereby there are actually 8 elements being considered on the heat signature of a particular country. As you would see, the green one is Philippines. And we have actually Myanmar, Indonesia, and China as part of those being compared. Now, as you would see, we have a very high to extreme risk factor when it comes to kidnapping and extortion risk, and also armed conflict. Whereas the other countries, basically, they are medium security levels. So that is how we are being perceived. And there were 162 countries that were surveyed by the Economic Intelligence Unit. Actually, it's an advisory firm to major banks in the West. And they have a ranking of where we are. So this is the Philippines. We are number 10 out of the top 15 countries considered high risk. So that's where we are. Now, before I proceed further, this is my reference point. I'd like to define what national security is, and I got it from a reference paper in 1999. National security, a state of or condition where our most cherished values and beliefs, our democratic way of life, our institutions of governance, and our unity, welfare, and well-being as a nation and people are permanently protected and continuously enhanced. If we have good national security, business will flourish. The regulatory environment will be very stable. Now, what are we facing right now? Again, this is taken from an updated version of the heat map taken from the national security document. Domestic threats. We are actually being confronted by a communist insurgency, a Muslim insurgency, extremism and terrorism, of course, natural disasters. We are the second most disaster-prone country in the world. Of course, poverty, crime, kidnap or ransom extortion, and illegal drugs, to the point that there is a perception that we have an incipient narco state. The presence of people in government, presence of some police officers make that perception. Of course, we have graft and corruption. Economic sabotage, basically smuggling, and environment degradation. For regional concerns, we are very much concerned, of course, with South China Sea, the Korean Peninsula, where we have a rogue state there, the Taiwan Strait, because of the declared intention of China to take over its runaway province by 2020, and of course the East China Sea, the skirmishes that Japan and China has at the moment. And again, international concerns, financial health of nations and wealth disparity. We are happy that the price of oil is going down, but it's not really good because a lot of economies, especially in the Middle East, depend on a good oil price. From 110 US dollars, it has now plummeted to 25 US dollars. And in these countries like Saudi Arabia, they have to slow down on their public spending. A lot of our people who are employed there have to go back. And it will increase the ranks of the unemployed. Extremism and terrorism. We have ISIS, which is of which there are some people in Mindanao trying to brand themselves as ISIS. But there are indications they are there for the reason that ISIS is an extremist ideology being propagated through the social media. And as you know, social media is so pervasive. That's why you have a lot of indications of lone wolf attacks being ascribed by them to ISIS. Of course, transnational crime, trafficking, drugs, etc., etc. We have ethnic and religious conflicts, climate change. As you see, we have more severe storms, longer dry spells. The polar ice cap is melting at an exponential rate. And cybernetics. Cybernetics, the fifth dimension of warfare. You have land, air, and sea. The fourth one is space, and the fifth is cybernetics. That's why we have to invest, we have to take a look at how we do business, because we are now actually information technology dependent. For example, the Philippine grid was built by ABB under a sovereign guarantee way back in the 1980s. So we have these towers from north to south. And the command center, the supervisory center, is in Diliman, Quezon City. And there had been serious attacks. But it's good that the system still holds. But definitely this has been taken cognizance already. So I'll proceed now. Kidnap for ransom. This is where we are. NYA. NYA is a consulting firm. In fact, it's a kidnap for ransom consulting firm of AIG. We are number 5. Now, there are actually 4 basic types of kidnapping. Well, we know the kidnap for ransom. That's what being practiced by Abu Sayyaf and our criminal groups here. We have express kidnapping, whereby they get somebody, and for a small amount, release the person. We have virtual kidnapping, whereby there is actually no kidnapping, but it has come that it made to appear that the person is being held, and again gives a small amount of money. And there is also kidnap me scam. So basically, we are actually number 5 out of a list of 25 countries. The armed conflict risk. This is a security risk that has actually denied the Philippines a lot of opportunities. Nationwide, we have the Communist Party of the Philippines. Through its armed wing, it has waged the longest-running insurgency in the world since 1969 and had claimed more than 50,000 lives. Again, Mindanao, supposedly a land of promise and opportunity, is affected by twin insurgencies of communists and the Muslim secessionists. Now, I'd like to take time out to present this to you. Earlier, there is a document here called the Philippine Roadmap to Communism. It was published in the Saturday issue of the Manila Times, last Saturday. Authored by Mr. Norberto Gonzalez, who is my esteemed mentor and friend. And it says, the communists shall not renounce armed struggle and continue the use of violence as the means of achieving state power. Political power comes from the barrel of the gun. Typical Mao Zedong doctrine. The CCP does not subscribe to the principles of an open and democratic system. The supremacy of the CPP, or the party, is paramount to the state. CPP, Communist Party of the Philippines, talks peace. The New People's Army wages armed struggle, and the National Democratic Front subverts the people. The window of victory by the CNN, there's their new tag, CPP, NPA, NDF, is now called the CNN over the state during the Duterte administration. Now that is a perception. Of course, I brought the matter up to my mentor also, Mr. Jess Doresa, and the report is with him. The point is, we are now engaged in a very critical stage whereby we are actually negotiating for the end of a communist rebellion. But at what terms? From the report, it is stated that the NPA, or the CPP and the NDF, seeks no less than a coalition government before any ceasefire. But looking through what is happening right now, to achieve a coalition government would take time. So what we have right now is a coalition cabinet with at least one senior CPP NPA member who has not renounced his allegiance and membership, sitting as the head executive secretary of the president, plus, of course, a handful of them in cabinet. The two people handling labor and the one handling social welfare, they're not communists. They're actually democratic-minded people who would like to have change in the system. But what we fear are people who are actually below ground with them, which I think is a concern that should be addressed, of course, by the administration. Now, with the joke, I hope it's a joke, that a revolutionary government will be declared if they do not succeed in 3 to 6 months, then we have a problem. Maybe by that time, we already have a revolutionary government in coalition with the Communist Party of the Philippines. And this is something that has created ripples in the business community. It's something that you have to actually closely assess. Again, you have seen, of course, what happened right after President Cory Aquino took over. There was let 1,000 labor unions bloom. And what has happened? Actually, business was at a paralysis because we have had wildcat labor strike by genuine labor unions, so quote unquote. Of course, we don't want that to happen again. The Mindanao problem. Of course, the BBL was struck dead in the water after the January 2015 Mama Sapano incident. And this is how they would like that. The table to your right is how they would like that to appear, to have their own territory. At the moment, the MILF has de facto recognition from the government of the Republic of the Philippines, of which we have recognized 7 fronts and 31 base commands. These base commands are actually communities. I mean, these are not actually military installations, but actually communities that are being strengthened politically to be able to wage a struggle in the event that this does not take off. Now, of course, the opt-in provision. So the setup could creep. If the adjoining territories would like to join, they can join by a mere 10% of people signifying their intention to join in a plebiscite, then we have a problem. Now, in Mindanao, actually, you have a proliferation of armed groups. Of course, you have the MNLF, the MILF, the BIFF. the Ranao Islamic Sultanate now, of the Mauti group, etc., etc., etc. So actually, that is the problem we have right now. Not to mention the possible organization of Christian militias, as what has happened during the 1970s. And I would know that because I was an advisor to be able to organize militias in northern Mindanao to fight the black shirts. So it's history, likely to repeat itself if we don't have control over the matter. So the situation right now is complex, diverse, ambiguous, and uncertain. It's uncertain, and that is why we have a keen interest on a lot of business leaders on how the temperature will heat up and what will be the situation be in the next 6 to 12 months. Now, having said that, as my backgrounder, to the presidents, managing directors, and CEOs in this room, why bother with security? To the security advisors and security managers in this room, to whom do you report? Do you report to HR? Do you report to administration or facilities? Or do you report to your president? And basically based on best practices. And this is what I advise my clients and my friends. If you're going to set up your company or you have an existing company, I have a model that you could look at called the Best Practices Pentagon. What are the 5 basic elements that you need? Number 1 is leadership. Leadership can be exercised only by one person, and that is the president or CEO or managing director. Nobody else. Why? Because the president is the one responsible for making money. At the same time, while making money, he should be responsible for preventing loss. You make money, but there's a hole, and your money goes away. So you have a responsibility for loss, prevention, and control. Now, basically what is needed now is to have a clear understanding of why you need security. 1, it improves the bottom line. Number 2, you need security to draw the line between danger and you and your company. Normally, there's nobody in a company except the head of security who has that competence to do that. Now, when it comes to people and organization, that's when we have culture. We have values. Of course, people, basically, the people will follow what is set by the president. And you should have basic processes. For doing business in remote and risky areas, basically, you just have to have a good project security system, good travel security, and compliance. Compliance, you have to crack the whip. Zero tolerance for not following the rules. That sets the tone of the organization. Now, risk management is a basic process. And that's where we have, before you go into an area, know what you're getting into. So there are actually volumes of knowledge, and that textbook knowledge, and of course, applications knowledge. But one thing I'd like to stress is that we can operate in the most dangerous areas, provided we have to have a good risk mitigation plan in place. And that is our experience, having worked with a lot of projects all over the Philippines. And of course, incident management. Incidents happen all the time. An incident could be an event or a non-event. But if an incident is not properly addressed, it becomes an emergency. So the emergency has to be addressed by your emergency or contingency plans. If it gets out of hand, it becomes a crisis. A crisis could spell between good or bad. The good here is that you will come out stronger. The bad part is that you may have to stop your operations. The last part, of course, is business resiliency and business continuity planning. Now, one thing I ask is that, do we have a business continuity plan? More often than not, the plans are there, set in a folder, stuck away and forgotten. And that is actually a problem if you are going to operate in interesting times. You don't recognize the risk, so how could you operate properly and achieve your objectives? So basically, that is what I prescribe. It's very simple. Of course, I am a student of Sun Tzu. The general who wins a battle makes many calculations in his temple before the battle is fought. The general who loses a battle makes but a few calculations beforehand. Thus do many calculations lead to victory and few calculations to defeat. How much more no calculation at all. It is by attention to this point that I can foresee who is likely to win or lose. Again, if you know the enemy, if you know the environment, if you know where you're going to, and you know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. Thank you very much, and have a good day.